Hey everybody, I just ran across this video called How a Political Science Teacher Changed Her Mind About Charlie Kirk. This seems like it might be a little interesting, so let's check this one out.
You said you are a
I'm a teacher.
teacher.
I'd rather not say exactly where, but it's in
Yeah, of course.
California.
Yeah. What do you teach?
I teach political science, so it's a college political science course in a 12th grade classroom for advanced students, so they can earn college credit while they're going to school. I am very adamant about being neutral in my classroom, so I don't share my own personal political views and presenting both sides. So if all my kids agree with one side, I'll just present the devil's advocate, whether I agree with it personally or not.
You're a better person than me. If I was a political science teacher, I'd be like, hold on.
Hey, I can respect that because here lately, anything conservative that people disagree with, they have to cancel you or tell you about how you are just an evil human being or something along those lines. So the fact that she doesn't do that, I appreciate that. We definitely need more teachers doing that the way they used to because too many of them are sharing their political values, they're sharing their sexual preferences, and they're not doing as much reading, writing, and arithmetic as they should be. So kudos to her for that.
Hold on. Yeah, the losers think this way. No, I'm just kidding. But it sounds like you're a great teacher. That's good to hear.
I just think it's important even if you don't agree with the other side, it's important to understand the other side's perspective and be able to, as a teacher, you should be able to argue both sides, in my opinion.
Totally.
But I had a student, just in reference to the Kirk thing, that I think it's what really kind of hit me was several years ago, this was many years ago, before a lot of people really knew who he was. I honestly didn't even know who he was at that point. A student came to me and asked, can we start a Turning Point chapter on campus?
Yeah.
And I said, because I've always told my students, I will advise, because they have to have a teacher advisor, I will advise a conservative or a liberal or anything as long as it's, there's nothing negative about it. And this is like a mea culpa. I didn't know who he was, so I said, well, let me look into it. And I said, I will Google it. And the narrative, as we know online, was very negative, and I did about 20-30 minutes of research, and I got a lot of negative feedback, to be perfectly honest. And I told the student no. And he said, and I explained, I said, a lot of what I've seen is, showing that there's a lot of racist and this and that. And he's told me, he's like, but he's not. And I said, I can't support that, right?
How are you researching that, if you don't mind me asking? Were you
General
looking at articles? Were you looking at Google?
Yeah, sorry, Googling articles, the general. And I'll be honest, I did not do a deep dive, and that's a mea culpa. I should have, right? Like,
See, she's telling you where she got her research from. I've been trying to tell people for a long time that legacy media is completely and totally biased to a leftist perspective. So naturally, everything they said about Charlie was he was a racist, he was a bigot, he was a misogynist. But when you do a deeper dive and get the videos in full context, you find out that's not true.
as being a busy teacher, you get caught up in and I think this is what the average person does, right? They just kind of go in, kind of gloss over, get this big picture idea, and it often is not the accurate one, right? So then he just kind of said, but Miss, I'm not gonna say my last name, but he's not. And I said, okay. I said, Miss Teacher. I said, he's not. And I said, okay. And so he just kind of let it go. Another student came back another year later and asked me, and this one did not let go. This student said, but you got to look at this. And I said, okay, so my thing is, I always say, bring me evidence, right? That's my thing. Bring me the evidence. He brought the evidence, right? Okay. He brought me tons of evidence, and we did a deep dive. And so I wish I could apologize to that first student, because I was wrong. I was very wrong. I looked at the quotes, and then they've taken out of context quotes, the completely missed quotes. I mean, it was ridiculous what I saw.
And it sounds like you're incredibly good faith in that. I think there's a lot of bad faith people that don't even try to do it. But
they don't even try. No matter how many people are telling you, hey, you are very misled on this. You need to do your own research. You need to not just look at little clips on TikTok because they were intentionally cut in ways to provide a negative narrative. You need to look at the whole clips. You need to watch his debates. You will understand that he is none of these things that they're saying he was. He just wasn't.
But it also makes it incredibly difficult when you know, you have your search engines are against you as well.
Yeah.
They're feeding all the top results are things to shape a particular narrative
Absolutely.
about somebody, either an ideology or a specific person. And so,
Absolutely.
you know, you're using the tools that you have available.
Yep.
And those are
Absolutely.
misdirecting you as well.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think very well-intentioned people
A lot.
go in there, and that's the narrative they get. And they're like,
Yeah.
well, how can you tell me anything different? This is what I'm seeing. This is my reality. And so we end up with two realities in this world, right?
For sure.
And so I have this one, because we do media as part of the unit, and I have this one screenshot of the 2016 election. I just did a Google image search. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton. Every single Donald Trump picture was like this mean looking, like kind of evil. And then Hillary Clinton was always smiling. And so I actually told my students to stop using Google at that point.
By the
And so-
millions, those tiny little things have a massive psychological impact.
And so I just, once he brought the evidence and we deep dived and we looked at it and we said, and I was wrong. I was like, he's not racist. He's not homophobic. He has a heart for God. And I am a Christian. I said, he has a heart for God. And so we were about to start a Turning Point chapter and COVID hit. So we never ended up getting that going. But
That student won that debate, huh?
He won it.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've had students change my mind. That's not the first time. It certainly wasn't the last time. So I've had students change my mind. I've always, my response is bring me the evidence. And when they bring it, I'm willing to look at it. But, you know, the first one, I wish I could apologize. He's probably long off, you know, probably married, having kids now. But like, I feel still terrible about that. And he was actually the one that introduced me to who Charlie Kirk was, those two students. So
And then here you are years later
Yeah.
at Turning Point HQ
yeah.
to pay your respects.
Yeah. And just to look at it as regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, this is not okay. This is not okay. And, you know, we talk about it in the class, and the vast majority of my students agree with that. They agree that it's not okay. But at the same time, some of them are saying, I don't know what to do with the fact that I secretly feel almost happy when the Butler thing happened. And, you know, and I said, well, we need to look into that. Where's that come?
Yeah, assassination culture is definitely back. I'm going to be doing a video later on a disturbing graph that has shown up online about the percentage of males and females from both parties who say that certain political assassinations are okay, and that's very disturbing. But that's for another video. But no, she's right. This is not okay. It wasn't okay for Charlie. It wasn't okay for the two attempts on Trump's life that we know of. It wasn't okay for the two Democrats who were killed in June and assassinated in Minnesota. None of that is okay. And it's also not okay to dance on any of these people's graves. You want people dancing on yours? Have a little human decency.
That coming from, and why are we giving into that? So
Well, tell me, you know, as a political science teacher, tell me your perspective on this when it comes to the two very different reactions following the brutal assassination of Charlie Kirk. You know, I know you're worried about your kids, and you should be, right, as a good teacher, but just in a general sense, your thoughts on those reactions as a country.
yeah.
Can I get your take on that?
Yeah, I can say as far as in the classroom from the student's perspective, I'm on leave right now because I have actually made the decision to homeschool my daughter for the year. But I am still very involved with other teachers. And so I can give you some of the teacher reactions.
Yeah,
and
sure,
I have
yeah.
to say it has been very disheartening to see a lot of we have these like little private teacher groups where most of the time we're talking about curriculum and lesson planning, but this last week there's been a lot of very negative response and teachers that are posting saying, I don't want to say what I really think because I'm afraid I'm going to get fired. So there's a lot of people getting fired. There is exponentially more that think that way that just won't say it out loud.
So we've touched on this, is there has been, I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of people took it to social media using their public profile to say the most vile things, and not just say the most vile things, but celebrate and encourage more, which is obviously horrifying. Now, those are the people that I think most of us would agree are the idiots that are willing to do that. How many more are privately believing that? And that's one of the scariest things.
Yeah, that's this.
Yeah.
The amount of people who are really thinking of it, and I've been in education for 20 years,
Yeah.
ginormous. And yeah, you know, being even just a neutral teacher is the minority, a huge minority.
And see, that's a problem. That is a problem. And that's why so many of us have been saying for some time now that schools, primarily universities, But even grade school, it has gone down into grade school, all the way down to kindergarten, putting some of these books in front of them, like genderqueer and all this. No 5-year-old needs that. And they're not getting educated. For as much money as we put into the education system, we are way down on the list for educated people. We've been doing nothing but breeding and creating idiots because it stopped being education and turned into Marxist indoctrination years ago. And you just heard her say that. She's been in the industry for 20 years. And it surprises her how it is. That's got to change. That's why I was not even remotely upset about doing away with the Department of Education, because it was the Department of Education and these federal teachers unions that are spreading this leftist bullshit onto our kids, creating mental illnesses. These kids don't need to be dealing with this. They don't. And these people make me sick. Homeschool your kids if you can.
And for many years, we've been pressured and silenced, and just, kind of made bad to feel if you don't embrace this particular ideology, and I don't necessarily embrace that ideology. I'm not on the liberal progressive side, and so it's kind of like sometimes you almost feel like you have to say, like, I don't want to say what I really think because I'm afraid I'm going to get fired. I'm afraid of this, and it's not because of violence. And so now you've got teachers who are like secretly celebrating violence. Yeah. That's a whole different thing. It's a different thing to say I am pro-choice or I'm pro-life or I'm pro this or I'm pro that. That's a whole different thing. You believe what you want, right? But when you are the person that is like, I want this person to die, what is wrong with our country, right? What is wrong with our media? That people could think, I don't care what you think, nobody should die for it. And if somebody made you think that way, there's a problem. Yeah.
And the number of teachers who went online and absolutely celebrated this brutal murder was astonishing. It was, we really want people like that teaching our kids? There's something seriously evil going across the country. Going across the world, actually. But it was astonishing, the number of people who celebrated and cheered his death and wore the white t-shirt that said freedom with all this red stuff coming down the left side for Halloween. I mean, that's disgusting. That's absolutely evil, and those people need some real help.
Well, I think one of the most horrifying things, too, is how many people here resonate with what Charlie Kirk says, or any Ben Shapiro, or any of these conservative figures. How many people actually agree with them on almost everything, maybe even everything, right? It's millions of Americans. And this is not some radical view. This is conservatism here, right? And so how many people agree with that, and how many people are actually wishing death upon those basic conservatives within it? I'm not going to pretend like Charlie Kirk was just some center right moderate whatever. No, he was a strong conservative. He really was, but he was certainly not what they're saying he is. And what they're saying he is all these disgusting authoritarian kind of positions to justify and perhaps encourage more of that political violence.
Yeah, I saw this one clip of him where it said, the clip or the meme said, there's no place for conservatives in the Republican movement. And then I looked at the actual clip, and he was saying, who are you to say there's no place for conservatives in the movement? And it was such a complete twisted sense of what he was saying. And so those are things, and it's just so many people are now so blocked to be anywhere near willing to listen, to hear, to really investigate themselves, because someone told me this, so therefore I believe that. And so
she's exactly right. People don't want facts, especially if the facts go against their beliefs. I'm sorry. Facts are facts. People are too lazy to do research. They want to just scroll through TikTok and get an absolutely manufactured narrative programmed into their brains. And no matter how many times you tell people, do your due diligence, they don't. Just want to stay ignorant, I guess. But anyway, that's kind of enough of this. You get the point. This video was done by James Klug. He often goes out on the street and does interviews. He's a conservative, middle of the road guy, like so many of us are. But I'll link the original video in the comments. Let me know what you want to let me know down in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Stay blessed, stay safe, and please make good choices. And I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.